the Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Spot Track Podcast, presented by Morgan Stanley Global Sports and Entertainment. I'm Kevin Sylvester, along with Paul Peck and the founder of SpotTrack.com, Mike Giannetti, and tell you more about Morgan Stanley Global Sports and Entertainment. They, of course, empower professional athletes and entertainers with everything they need to know to make informed decisions about their finances and wealth. Learn more. Visit morganstanley.com/GSE. Morgan Stanley Smith Barney, LLC, member SIPC. The band is back together here because training camp is in Wayne. We got trades and we got all sorts of
trade
stuff.
Trade deadline coming up, which I feel like we need to start this with Mr. Met here and his reaction to the Mets being aggressive in trading for Marcus Stroman and or maybe trading other pieces. But I feel like we need to start our baseball trade deadline discussion with you.
I did something I very rarely do. Maybe 3 times in 12 years of Spot Trek Twitter, I lashed out to the Mets on Twitter.
Mr. Numbers, Mr. Down the Road, the numbers tell the story. There's no emotion involved.
Look, I tempered myself, right? I had the first tweet, and it was nasty, and I drew it back, and I cleaned it up a little bit, and I put one out there that I was proud of. Basically, it was the Yankees were offered this deal, right, for their, a top 5 prospect for the Yankees, and they hung up the phone. And then the Mets got called, and the Mets offered them their number 4 and number 6 prospect, right, for this guy who's a ground ball pitcher at best. I mean, I like Marcus Stroman. I've seen him in person a lot. I've been to Toronto to see him a lot. It's fine. There has to be another move to complement this move.
I would agree with that.
And that's the speculation that we're leading up to Wednesday with is, how are the Mets going to proceed now? They're not buyers. So anybody saying the Mets are buyers are crazy. They're not buyers. They're not going to be acquiring.
Then why do the Stroman trade? Because you're going to sell something else. Is that what you're saying?
My guess is one or both of Wheeler and Syndergaard go, and we'll talk about where in a couple minutes here. But the bottom line is this. Stroman's under contract through next year, and either you flip him, right? You trade him in the winter, or you trade him next deadline for some sort of return, or you sign him to a contract that is certainly going to be less than what Syndergaard was going to cost.
Okay, makes sense.
Syndergaard was going to go to free agency. He said it 1,000 times to the media. He wanted to go and test the market and see what his actual value is. Fine. That number is going to be huge. I mean, it's just going to be huge.
Beyond what the Mets are likely either going to want to or be able to afford to pay.
Right. So in that regard, if that's all we think about, it's a fine move. They gave up two pitching prospects, though. I don't like that. We've had this discussion with all the sports on this show about how building through the draft is, if you've got it, you don't give it up. And the Mets have given up 4 prospects now in the last 12 months. Their 2 best hitting prospects and 2 of their better pitching prospects for Robinson Cano, Edwin Diaz, and Marcus Stroman.
It makes 0 sense.
No, that doesn't sound good.
Right. That's not that sounds like that's not a plan.
That is a win now plan for a team that is 6 games out of the wild card.
Right.
Not good.
No, it's not good. I personally, I wish they could have found a way or find a way to keep Syndergaard. I mean, I loved him and DeGrom together ever since they've been there, and he's going to move on here.
Let's dive right into it because I've got some, my soon to be or sure to be 100% wrong guesses as to where guys are going, and I actually I've thought about this more and more. I think I want the Mets to play nice with the Yankees here. For everything you're saying, I love Syndergaard in New York.
Yes,
and if he can't help
Thor.
us,
How could you not have Thor in New York?
He is just the way he looks, the way he sort of carries himself. He's a New York star.
But the Yankees are kind of boring right now, aren't they?
Oh, very boring.
In a really nice way.
Boringly good.
Boringly good. They've done everything right for like 4 years in a row here. Cashman's been sort of a genius with how he's put this thing together.
He does not want to go to the Yankees, though. Do you know why?
Because of the hair.
Because you got to cut his hair.
I know. I'm not sure that's still a rule. And maybe they let him put it up in the man bun and he's good. You never know. You never know. But you know what I'm saying?
You think George Steinbrenner would have signed off on a man bun?
Can you imagine?
Costanza!
Oh, my God.
I was just thinking Costanza and the calzones. That's so bad. All right, anyway.
But you know what I'm saying? Right? Because Syndergaard's not a jerk.
No.
He's a lovable but polarizing guy. Just a ton of charisma. if you dump that guy on this roster for the next 3 months and then into the postseason, it just seems like it's a perfect fit.
It's
not to mention he throws 100.
It's the Verlander equivalent
to some degree,
move, right?
To some degree. It's not the old grandpa coming in and shoring up the kids, but it's sort of like a little bit of character. Giancarlo Stanton was sort of going to be this guy, but can't stay healthy.
Yeah,
so, and they certainly need a pitcher, and this sort of just fits all dots for me.
But wouldn't you, if you're going for a pitcher?
Yeah.
Isn't Bumgarner the guy to go for? If you're any team out there looking to add, that guy is a postseason stud.
Here's what I'm hearing with here's what I'm hearing with the Yankees. I'm hearing it's Syndergaard or Robbie Ray out of Arizona. And honestly, those two guys are pretty similar in terms of how they pitch on the mound. So,
Robbie Ray throws better punches.
My guess is.
Oh, wrong one. Sorry.
If I had to guess, I've got Bumgarner on this list. Obviously, I've got 4 Giants names on this list because they're just in a position where they could really sell hard here. But they're 2 games out.
Right.
And if you even if selling Bumgarner is the right business move, and I do think it is, I don't think he resigns there. I think maybe there's been some damaged lines there, and he's going to want a change of scenery next year, and it's going to contract's expiring here. The right business move is to sell him now and get what you can get. I just think it would look really bad.
Oh, sure.
I think you are damaging the rest of your season. Even if you can win without him, I just think that the optics of it might be detrimental to the rest of the season for the Giants.
Well, if you think you're going to win, you keep him. If it's about winning,
I think so, right?
You keep him.
Yeah.
So because you're telling your fans, if you move that guy, you're telling your fans, we don't think we can win. To me, that's the message.
Let me throw this at you, and where you guys are going is absolutely right. But you said it, and it made me wonder: has the business of sports, changed so much that the fans either are starting to understand or need to understand that trading a player like that isn't giving up anymore, isn't a throwing in the towel, raising the white flag? It's part of the business of how you run sports now. And if you do that and the benefit kicks in a year or 2 later with the players that you acquire from that trade, then you won. So I mean, not to question what you're saying, Kevin, I just wonder if it's one of those perceptions that we've all had for a long time that we need to start rethinking.
All right. We're going to talk about hockey, but I'll just use it to a hockey team that we follow here in Buffalo. How did that go over? What you just said there. How did it go over?
Well, but
no, I'm just the difference gone over horribly.
Yeah, no, but I think the difference is what are you bringing back? I mean, there's part of letting the stars leave. There's the other part now, which there's plenty of models to point to that have led to success, like Houston and Astros and a few other places, where that was the key move to make to be successful.
Well, and Mike has a list here of the last 4 World Series winners and their acquisitions, but I'm just talking about giving up players. It's a little different for the Giants because they've won World Series with this guy. And so to me, their standard is different. Like, to me, the Giants standard is the same as the Dodgers standard, the Yankee standard, the Red Sox standard, and perhaps we'll see what the Astros and Cubs do. But the standards for those franchises have to be different. It's about winning.
Does it matter that this is Bruce Bochy's last season? Does that affect this at all?
It shouldn't. If you're operating the team for the best chance to win year in and year out. That's what I'm saying. It should be year in and year out for the Giants. Not, all right, we got to win now because our team's going to go away. It's like, how do we continue?
It's hard to do year in and year out.
Let me tell you.
You know what I'm saying?
But the Red Sox and Yankees are always there. The Dodgers are always there in the equation.
I feel like they operate on a different level compared to the rest of the league. And if you're going to chase that, then you've got to be all in budgetarily. But
they're not the Royals. They're not the Kansas City Royals. This is the San Francisco Giants. Come on.
One thing I've heard more this year than I think ever from teams like the Giants, the Nationals, the Mets. There's been more talk about we don't want to just be a wild card team. Because that's not good. If we don't think we can win it all right now, we're selling. And I'm not sure, is that really the best philosophy? Remember when it was just let's get in?
Yes.
Let's get in and see what happens? Every other sport still operates that way. Every other sport. We just want to get in and then we'll roll the dice in the postseason because it's a whole different season.
I just feel like
is it not the case in
we're
baseball?
Starting to see enough examples of teams that have played it that way, and it's ultimately been successful. So when you see other teams that start to do it that way, I think it's logical that teams will go, well, why can't we can do that too? Yeah. And again, I think there's a lot wrong in a lot of professional sports with either win the championship or you're a failure. That's wrong. It's just, in my opinion, it's wrong. It's unrealistic. There's only one team that's going to win. Fans need to not run around being mad if their team loses in the finals or the World Series or the NBA final. I mean, that's crazy to me. But I guess there's part of fan bases and teams themselves that operate that way.
We had this exact conversation last year with Bryce Harper. Remember?
Yeah.
The Nationals were sort of just hanging around, and Harper was expiring contract. You almost knew he wasn't going to be back. So what do? You get the best value?
That's the key to me, Mike. The key is, to me, in a decision like this, if you don't think you can keep that player, then you got to get rid of him. Well, and that's where as we talked, as you made a reference to the team that we follow here in Buffalo, the low point of their inability to handle free agency was letting 2-star players leave and getting nothing in return. Now, would it have been smarter to look back at that time 10 years ago, had the Sabres traded Chris Drury and Danny Briere? There would have been incredible blowback at the time had they done it, but in reality, as you look back in hindsight, that would have been the move to make, and it's starting to become the move that everybody's starting to make now, including the Nationals with Bryce Harper. That's a prime example.
Yeah.
I don't want to go too far down that wormhole, but we'll have an offline discussion.
Okay.
Concerning that. But no, I know what you're saying. I think this is more about a business decision in labor, and they're looking at it like a factory, in that, you know what, this guy, we could put someone else on the assembly line and have a similar output for a whole lot less in
Isn't that
salary.
What we talk about with the NFL all the time?
That's what it is,
yeah.
Right? That's what it is. That's what it is for the Mets with Syndergaard. Bumgarner, whether he wants to stay there or not, I don't know. It's just going to be weird for me to not see him. But Verlander going from the Tigers to the Astros, okay, I get it. It's the window of winning. If we're not going to continue winning, I'm not going to pay $30 million to a starting pitcher, even though he's going to give me 20 wins and I can get 30 starts out of him. I'm not going to do that because it's not cost effective while I'm trying to build a winner.
Hey,
right?
Listen, it stinks for the fans.
It does.
That attitude stinks for the fans. But obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you are someone who is in line with the thinking of what modern sports has become based on numbers and analytics and salaries. So you sort of understand the dynamic of it. But I feel for it. It stinks. I mean, we were all kids who had collected cards and watched our heroes, and I'll throw the one that I remember most in my lifetime was Tom Seaver being traded by the Mets.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up a huge Mets fan. I know I am old. What year was it? Do you remember what year it was? I mean, I was 10, 11, 12 years old. It was devastating. Because even though the Mets stunk for a good part of that rest of that decade after 73, Tom Seaver was the biggest star ever. You looked up to this guy. When he was pitching, everything stopped. When they traded him, it was like a gut punch.
77.
77.
I'm 12 years old then. So
you think about what the Mets have, in their history. In 69, right, the amazing Mets, they
Correct.
had Nolan Ryan and Tom Seaver.
Yeah.
Like two of the greatest pitchers ever. If they just hung on to those two guys.
You talk about the Tigers. They had Verlander and Scherzer.
Right.
Right.
What are we doing there?
Wow.
So I feel for the fans.
Not to mention Jack Morris way back.
I feel for the fans that lock in on these guys, buy their jerseys, become heroes to them, and essentially they're treated like lines on a spreadsheet, and that stinks sometimes.
Well,
That's
it also
my bad, sorry.
No, but it also shows you where the game's at.
Yeah.
If you hang on to Verlander and Scherzer,
Yeah.
and you can't win with those two guys, come on, right?
Teams are reluctant right now to admit that the 3-year window exists, because what has to happen when you admit it is you have to pay hard in those 3 years, or maybe the first 2 years at least, right? You've got to pay. Let me bring in football here a little bit, because I just had this conversation with myself on the drive here. Why isn't Jerry Jones in this mode right now? If Jerry Jones honestly thinks that Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper and Ezekiel Elliott are the 3 linchpins to them winning a Super Bowl, They've already signed DeMarcus Lawrence. They've already signed their pass rusher. They've got Byron Jones in the secondary. They've got all the 5 major positions on their roster right now. That's it. That's the 5 major positions. He should be throwing money at these 3 guys if he believes they're the 3 guys. The fact that none of them have a contract makes me think he really doesn't believe that. Or somebody is in his ear saying, Dak's good, but and Zeke, we really shouldn't do this. And, we can wait on Amari because there's 4 other guys that need...
Because if there's any owner in football that will haphazardly throw money at players,
exactly,
it's Jerry Jones.
Exactly. Doesn't it? Weren't you just dying to see him come out, February 1st and say, we're ready to go. Here's $150 million. Spend it with these 3 guys. Let's go.
And he's the guy who's never worried that if he overpaid or if 2 years from now after paying Dak Prescott, Dak stinks. He never worried about it. He was always the team that was always over the cap, that was always trying to use the credit card approach.
That charismatic, guy is now coming onto the microphone and saying, we got to be careful with Zeke.
You saw what he said today, right? You don't need a star. You don't need an NFL rushing leader to win a championship, right? Boy, is that a shot across the bow or what?
Right. Exactly. I'm shocked that guy right there isn't identifying his current roster as a winning roster.
All right, I'm going to throw a theory at you. Here's just popped into my head. 2 things would explain this incredible uncharacteristic behavior by Jerry Jones. He's seen how the league is operating, and he realizes the way he used to operate isn't the right way. Secondly, they're the Cowboys, and they'll always be the Cowboys, win or lose. And I wonder if he's thought about, why should I do this to try to win a Super Bowl when my ego and all that other stuff will look great, but I'm always going to be the Cowboys. I'm always going to sell my stadium out. I'm always going to be the number 1 talked about team in the NFL. Do I need to do all of this?
I think
I'm pausing for effect.
Yeah. No, it's on the business side, the answer is no, you don't. But on the ego side, the answer is yes.
Maybe less ego and more business from Jerry Jones has evolved.
So winning doesn't matter? Is that where you're going here?
Winning a championship doesn't matter.
But they're not even winning playoff games.
Well, that's
got to matter.
That has to matter, yes. But I'm saying, does winning a championship matter as much as it used to? And does Jerry Jones say, Well,
the money says no, it doesn't. The money says no. Right?
You're right.
Or the Patriots to be the number 1 rated franchise in all of sports.
Correct.
And it's the Cowboys.
And it's
not even close.
Yeah. So the money says no, it doesn't matter. All right, Paul, thanks for that.
Let's run down these World Series.
Yeah, we're getting very deep here.
I know. I was going to say,
what happens when I'm a week off.
Let's bring this back.
I'm inclined to bet the Cowboys to win the Super Bowl.
All right, last 4 World Series winners, deadline acquisitions. Last year, the Red Sox, 2 pitchers, Nathan Eovaldi.
No, Steven Pearce, the World Series MVP.
I was going to get there.
That's crazy.
Steven Pearce, right. They picked up the World Series MVP. Well, when you look at what happened in the NBA and NHL, that's a trend, right?
It's a trend.
That's the trend.
God, I didn't even realize that.
Yes.
It stemmed back to baseball, too. Wow. You acquire the eventual championship MVP.
Right. Guys,
three sports in a row did it.
They're right. So thrilled NHL, to be on different teams.
Yeah.
But he was deadline. He was not prior to the season. The other 2 were prior to the season. This was a deadline deal, so a little different there. Justin Verlander, 2017, went 5-0. Was incredible down the stretch to close out the regular season. 2016, Aroldis Chapman.
Yeah, changed the Cubs.
Right?
Completely changed them. 2015,
how about Johnny Cueto, right? It's the complete game in the world. Ben Zobrist. So those...
Against my Mets, by the way.
Yes. Significant acquisitions here. So you have some guesses, we'll call them. Not predictions, some guesses.
I do. I'm going to change my first one based on what I've read this morning. It sounds like Trevor Bauer and his craziness is staying in Cleveland through the end of the year. He's under. You know about the craziness, right?
No.
Oh my goodness. This is just the best. I wish we were live right now on camera so we could show this thing. He gets taken out of his game. His final start. What we thought was going to be his final start in Cleveland. And he pulls a complete Trevor Bauer. You see the scowl on the face. He's mad. Francona's walking out to get him. Takes the baseball, turns around, chucks it 250 feet into center field. Over the fence.
See this.
Over the fence.
Yeah.
Francona gets up there looking like,
I'm not giving you the ball.
When your kid does something wrong.
Yes.
And basically sends him on timeout, sends him right down the tunnel. The camera follows Francona going right down the tunnel. Who knows what got said there,
Sure.
right? But that's how we all thought that the Indians' career of Trevor Bauer was going to end. It's unbelievable. You got to watch it. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's a hell of a throw.
It's a great throw. Do we love the passion?
So that's
right?
that's been the talking point for the last 48
Sure.
hours is, does this devalue him at all? Well,
Is that what you tell your kids when they throw a temper tantrum? I love your passion.
We just had one of those this morning, and no, it's not what I told them.
I've heard people say, well, batters break their bats when they strike out,
Yeah.
right? Well, that's a little different.
I probably told them a similar thing that Francona told them.
Yeah,
just with a
yeah,
little
yeah.
less
The
expletive.
dad and me saw Francona walking out there like, oh my god, I would love to be that guy right now. Just rip it. So I think Bauer's staying. The Indians are the Indians can win the division. I mean, they've gained 9 games on the Twins in the last month and a half. So he stays because they're in it and they can handle his crazy. They've been doing it for a long time now. I do think the Astros get a pitcher. I think it's going to be Zach Wheeler from the Mets. I think they're going hard after Wheeler. It makes a lot of sense. It's going to be a rental acquisition. It's an expiring contract here. I do think the Mets probably let 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 players go in the next 24 hours here, which is right. It's the right move. But the guys we're talking about, they're the right guys to go. I hate to see Noah go. I think he ends up with the Yankees. I know the Padres have been talked about. The Astros have been in on Noah. I think they'd like what they can get with Wheeler for less. Noah's not a rental. Noah's got 2 years left.
Sure.
So a rental for Wheeler will cost much less in terms of what they have to give up. So I think that's how it shakes out. I'd love to see the Yankees get Noah Syndergaard for everything we've already talked about. Cool. Dodgers have to do something. We just went through the last 4 World Series winners. Every World Series winner has done something impactful at the deadline to make their roster better for the next 3 months. I think it's maybe another reliever to go with Kenley Janssen, who he's kind of scary. That health issue he's got, it's scary. You don't know how long he can last through this year. And obviously an extra, back end of the bullpen arm is always important at the end of the year.
Now, this is the trade deadline. This is not the waiver wire.
That's gone now.
That's gone.
That's gone.
Yeah,
That's why this
it's
is so
all
important.
tomorrow.
It is
It's all Wednesday.
It's a hard deadline.
Awesome.
Now. Yeah,
Okay.
so it's a big deal. This is 24 hours to make it happen for the rest of the year.
And that makes it simpler for fans.
Yes,
right?
it does.
You always
Totally.
like,
for
wait
me,
a second,
having to
right?
explain the waiver deadline, my God, it's like dead cap in football. So the Dodgers are going to do something. I think they get a reliever, maybe Shane Green out of Detroit, who's maybe the best relief pitcher available right now. They're going to have to give up a lot.
Does
He's
Magic
got
get
a
involved
ton
in
of
this
control.
stuff, or does Magic stay out of
Is
this
Magic
stuff?
still with the Dodgers, or did he bail on them too?
I don't even know. Anyhow,
Got extra time.
Look, I'll say this: the Dodgers are damn good.
they're good.
If you've watched them at all this year, or even lately, their starting pitching has been outstanding. They can hit to all fields with power.
This will be year 3, right?
There's a lot going on with LA. Yes,
A 3-year window.
Yes, it will, and they move guys around all the time. Their shortstop plays right field. Their center fielder plays second. They're doing a lot of things really smart. Just going to keep things fresh. It's a long season. I really like what's happening there. If they get a guy like Shane Green to go in front of Kenley Janssen, look out. I don't know how you don't bet anybody else. Tampa's in the similar vein with the Mets right now. Tampa had a great start to the year. They faded. They need a shakeup. And I think Yasiel Puig is that shakeup, right?
you can almost guarantee you get him. That's a
Does he
shakeup.
come sleeveless?
They'd take it. I think it's a similar situation to the Yankees where they sort of need a little bit of charisma, a little swag,
Sure.
To sort of take this thing to the finish line. Puig's been great. Cincinnati, I know that was Daffy Duck.
There's a little Elmer Fudd in there.
Puig.
That was awesome.
3, 2, 1. No. The Reds have been fun to watch. I've seen him a bunch against the Mets this year, and he's been great. He's a stat producer. I know the Indians are in on Puig as well. I just think Tampa's got more to give up right now. Their prospect system is ridiculous. So that's probably 100% to be wrong, but that makes a lot of sense to me. Minnesota, holy cow! They're in first place right now, but man, it's maybe the most unsafe first place ever right now. I mean, the Indians are all over them. The Yankees are better than them. The Red Sox are better than them. The Astros are certainly better than them. They might just mail it in and say, we're going to ride this thing out. They've made a lot of moves in the past 12 months. They might just say, let's just ride this thing out and see what happens. I don't know if they'll be big buyers. We'll have to see on them. This is the team I really want to talk about a little bit before we wrap it up here. The San Diego Padres are not in terms of 2019. They're not in, but they've gotten a lot better. If you haven't watched this team and these kids, there's a lot of fun things going out there. I love the Machado move now that I can see it in action with the rest of this roster. The Fernando Tatis kid is so much fun to watch. He's like a young
That's Junior, Fernando Tatis Jr., right?
Yeah, Robinson Cano type of player.
Sure.
He's smooth as hell, but he works his butt off. That's where it differs from Cano. He's really fun to watch. They've got a couple of big bats in the outfield. They need pitching. They've got some youngsters who I think are a couple of years away, but if they throw a major pitcher, if it's Syndergaard, if it's Matt Boyd out of Detroit, they don't have to do this now, I don't think. But, there's some arms available now to where if they want to overpay to get that guy now and get ready for next year, I could see that happening. But that's really a team to watch, especially like your fantasy guys out there. There's 6-7 guys from a fantasy standpoint that are really fun for your team right now.
All right.
Yeah.
They should go back to the old
They've
logo.
worn them a few times.
Yeah.
They've worn the old school uniforms a few times.
The Friar.
The Friar,
yes.
Yeah. What he had a name. That the mascot had a name, and it's escaping me. But
all right, I don't remember what it was either. Just one of those cool old-fashioned logos. All right, let's move on to some hockey here before we dive back into football.
Which is not really hockey, which is why we're talking about it.
It's still the summer in hockey. There's still some contracts out there.
A lot, actually.
Right. And there's one team in particular that has some issue, and that's the Maple Leafs. They've got 2 significant players unsigned. One's an unrestricted free agent. The other one, a restricted free agent in Mitch Marner. But the Maple Leafs, they right now, as we talk today, are negative, rounding up, $3 million. Negative $3 million in actual cap space. Right? It's $2.9 million. They have 4 players, and you say some of these players, and you can't believe they're still in the league. Like Nathan Horton.
Well, they're not, though. That's what's
cool
about it.
They're the who's the player from Utah? The Keith Van Horn.
Keith Van Horn, right?
Yeah. Keith Van Horns of the NHL. Yeah. Nathan Horton.
Yeah.
Dave Clarkson, Zach Hyman, and Travis Dermott. They're on the long-term injury restricted list, right?
Likely to never play ever again.
But so they get paid, and their money doesn't go against the cap.
Yeah.
Right now, so I don't want to say it's a loophole, but when you make trades, and you've seen trades happen in the NHL where, okay, you're going to take this contract, this injury money, because some teams don't want to pay it or can't afford to pay on a cash basis, and some teams will take that on. I'll just pay the cash in order to get the other player.
Yeah.
Right? And teams like the Maple Leafs, the rich teams like that, are willing to do it.
Yeah, we're going to see it a lot this next week and a half or so. Teams that are up against it, good teams that are up against the numbers, will use this as a way to get out from the under.
Right.
They will.
You're buying cap space, or it's the extra push to get a player.
If you need another signing, this is the way to do it, and that's what we're talking about here.
Right.
Yeah.
So if with all 4 of those on the LTIR, they can create $10.3 million.
Over 10, yeah.
In cap space, which
that's huge.
Which is Mitch Marner.
That's a superstar.
Right?
Yeah, that's about what Mitch Marner's going to want, right?
Well, he wants 11, right? He wants close to 11.
He wants 11. So, but they could free that up with a couple of minor league. You have to be a 23-man roster by October 1st, right? You could be under.
You could be a 21-man roster.
So they dump 2 of those guys down to the minors. There's your extra $1.5 million.
Right, but you always need some room for injuries.
Yep.
If someone's not on the 10-day DL, they used to call it, or injury list, you always need some money. Matter of fact, there was, I want to say the New Jersey Devils, there was a game against Buffalo one time where they had one less skater on the ice.
Right.
They didn't have room on their salary cap.
They had 6D, and they had 11 forwards in the game because they didn't have enough cap space to bring a player up to pay him for the 2 days. They didn't have enough room for 2 days' pay, which I think was around $50,000 or something.
You would be surprised how much every day matters. I mean, I update the site every single day, all year long, and I became aware of that very quickly. That this is not about, he had a bad game, he's got to go down. No. It's about saving $25,000.
I will not.
That's what it is.
I will not tell you the player's name, but there was a player that got sent from Vancouver back to Portland, Oregon. Not Portland, Oregon. Portland, Maine, I think was the franchise. And then had to go there for a day. Spent literally 2 days in the airport just for the transaction, not to have him on the NHL club. and
that
was
saved
sent
$6,000
to save enough money because they couldn't afford it. That's correct.
Right. So, and that'll happen like with minor leaguers will be sent down if there's 3 days between games. They'll be sent down and then brought back up on the game day, right? In order to avoid those 2 days of paying them NHL rate.
And that is why it's great to have. Again, we're in Buffalo, folks. Sorry, that's why we keep referencing Buffalo. They have Rochester so close. It's why the Maple Leafs and the Marlies in the same city. What an advantage because of that.
They're going to use it a lot this year.
Yes, you're damn right there.
Because of everything we're talking about here. They're going to have to squeeze this thing in right down to the deadline. They might need a trade. Because you're right. They need some buffer room.
They do.
They might need to move
wiggle.
one of these $1 or $2 million guys off this roster at some point just to make this thing comfortable for them. But it sure sounds like, even if an offer sheet comes in, it sure sounds like they can make it happen right now.
Yes.
Which is crazy.
They need to be able to match an offer sheet.
Yeah.
Which is a threat for Mitch Marner. And teams haven't done it because they obviously know it's gonna be matched.
Yeah, but
right?
Isn't this a reason to do it?
Damn right it's a reason.
If you've got this team who can conceivably win, I mean, this is a winning roster right now, close enough, right? Why wouldn't you want to
very good team?
Why wouldn't you want to put them up against it? Why wouldn't you offer a 4 for 44 right now for Mitch Marner?
Well, the teams that need him, again, comes down to your own cap space.
Yeah, Colorado can afford it.
And general managers are afraid to give up the first round picks and such because it's so difficult to say I'm going to win now. You're making a face at me, Mike, but I'm just telling you.
I just think some guys are worth it.
There are some guys that are worth it. Is he worth it by himself? So here's the other thing. This is what I'd be leery of. I think Mitch Marner is a fabulous player.
Yeah.
Okay? I'd be leery of it only because everybody who's moved a team that's played with John Tavares has not been very good in recent years.
Yeah.
So I think John Tavares makes so many other players so much better, and they have two magnificent players there in Matthews and Tavares. I'm not trying to take anything away from Mitch Marner, but they draw so much attention. That's why I think you haven't seen it done yet. That's not to say Mitch Marner's not an excellent player because
You're saying there's likely some doubt around the league that Mitch Marner can be the guy. By himself, and if you sign him to an $11 million contract,
you better be the guy.
But if you're Colorado with over $16 million,
if I'm Colorado,
he doesn't need to be the guy,
and you've got Nathan McKinnon, and you've got Landeskog and Burakovsky. That's a team that's ready and has the space. Put it in a sheet, right?
I would.
I think I would too.
Teams that it's frowned upon amongst the GMs. Look at blame your owners. Blame the people who negotiated the collective bargaining agreement.
Yes.
It's a tool in the bargaining agreement, and your
just like the LTIR is.
Right.
It's a vice. It's there, and teams are using it.
But believe me, there are general managers that there's cliques.
Yeah, I know
in the league, right?
I know.
And if you piss off a guy in that clique, and then you go to make a trade, hey, you know what? You screwed my buddy. Forget about it.
You know what though?
That stuff happens. It's so stupid.
Here's my take. If I'm Colorado, who was the worst team in hockey, they just saw the other worst team in hockey win the Stanley Cup in 1 year.
Yes.
This roster can do that with Mitch Marner. This roster can do that. Do it.
I would be, like I said, I would do it.
I would do it.
But everybody's leery of doing it.
I mean,
and then if it gets they get matched, everybody gets pissed, and then you look foolish. Why do you look foolish? Okay. You're trying to make your team great.
Okay, but St. Louis gave up, a first and 3 players? For Ryan O'Reilly, the eventual Stanley Cup MVP?
They gave up a first.
A first and 3 players.
They gave up a first.
Right. But
it's like
I'm saying.
What did they give up? A guy who quit during the season, another guy who was a non-factor, and a guy who's a big question mark.
So instead of the offer sheet, why not just offer up 2 firsts for the rights to Mitch Marner?
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Say, hey, look, I'm going to sign. Well, if you're Toronto,
you're not doing it.
No, if you're Kyle Dubas, you're saying, go ahead, make the offer sheet.
We'll match it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We'll either match it or we'll be glad to take your 5 first-round picks or 4 first-round picks.
Okay.
Whatever the compensation. I think it'd be 5. If I'm Dubas, I'd be like, yeah.
Do you think a team has offered 2 firsts for Marner?
Sure.
Yeah? You
absolutely.
think it's happened already?
If someone hasn't been willing to offer 2 firsts for him, they're nuts.
Yeah. He's that kind
He's
of
worth
player.
2 first-round picks.
Does that change in the next CBA? I mean, again, we can talk all we want about it, but if nobody does it, it's not a tool, right? Is that going to change? Is restricted free agency going to change so that it becomes a tool?
Well, I think
you can lower the compensation.
Hold on. Here's one important thing of note. an offer sheet has to be negotiated between the player and the other team.
Mm-hmm.
So, teams who might have been interested, Mitch Marner may not be interested in playing for.
True.
That's important to know. It's not just where you submit a waiver claim on somebody.
Yeah.
You can't just say, hey, Mitch Marner, here's my offer sheet on you. No, it's something negotiated between the two.
Sign it.
He's got to, his agent's got to negotiate it, agree to it, and then it's presented to the other team like, hey, we have an offer sheet. We're putting an offer sheet in. We've agreed to this amount. So you
But I like that part of it because it's the player's control.
Correct.
Otherwise, if Colorado offers 2 firsts and Toronto takes it, Marner's got to go.
I think if anything, the players will lobby to have the compensation be less.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah,
have it be 3 first-round picks.
It's useless right now. Nobody does it. So we talk all this much about it, and then people get excited about it. Nobody does it. So to either take it out or change it so that it becomes more realistic.
There's only been a couple of successful ones, and they've overpaid for Dustin Penner.
Dustin Penner.
Right.
So don't you think it's just a conversation like this? Like, what is Mitch Marner actually worth? What's he worth? 2 firsts and a second? 2 firsts, 2 seconds? That's the conversation to have with this new CBA.
Sure.
What is their actual value? That's the compensation here.
Well, I think it should go upon. There should be levels of it.
Of course, based on monetary
you're paying,
return.
You're paying
which
big
is what it
on
is
what
now.
ifs. You're paying big on what ifs. But listen, the injury cap space. It's interesting that you take on players. You've got to get something more in return.
Yeah.
If you're the team taking on money, I'm going to pay a guy not to play. Like Nathan Horton's never playing again. It's just not happening.
It's a manipulation of the cap, is what it is.
Yes.
It's a manipulation of the cap.
Absolutely right.
And back to the Marner point, just to finish it off here. And I'm going to say this until I'm blue in the face. Offer sheets drive more player movement, and the NHL needs more player movement. It just has to happen. They need guys signing contracts more regularly, and they need players on the move. Has to happen.
I would agree. Look what it's done for the NBA.
For every other sport.
Great for the NBA. When trades are actually consummated, it's like a courtship to make a trade in the NHL. After a trade happens, you're like, we've been talking about this for a year and a half.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, my God.
Exactly.
It's like trying to close on a house in New York State. Like, come on.
Yes. How about Connor McDavid next year says, I'm sick of losing on this crappy team. Get me the heck out of here.
Sure.
Right? Let's do it.
He said that, by the way, when they won the lottery.
A picture is worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, boy. All right. Before we shift to football, I want to give a message out here to the fantasy football geeks, nerds.
Ooh, it's Dynasty time.
Yes, it is Dynasty time.
I'm in it.
If you missed out on the beta, sign up for the Dynasty Owner. You got great news here because this is a way to lock it down lifetime here, okay? Through their Indiegogo campaign, here's how it works. Go to dynastyowner.com, select the level of support, $250, $500, $1,000, $5,000 for you big rollers, and you'll lock in a Dynasty team for life. They're not going away, so don't worry. Plus, additional gifts, you get hats, shirts, Yeti mugs. Those are fantastic, by the way. Game tickets. And how about this? A 1-week trip to a private villa in Mexico. You can vacation with Mike. Prizes vary based on your
my 3 kids.
Selected level of support. So gear up for the upcoming football season. The first Dynasty Salary Cap Fantasy Sports game that not only plays the game week to week, but uses actual contracts and salaries, gives you the roster power of both coach and general manager. Visit dynastyowner.com, register your team, and lock in a few great prizes, and keep up with all the latest on the Dynasty Owner podcast wherever you subscribe. We're pleased to have one of the great and most well-recognized agents in the NFL, Drew Rosenhaus, joining us here on the SpotTrack.com podcast. And nothing's happened today. Nothing busy for you, right, Drew?
I'm actually at the Chiefs facility, training camp in St. Joe's, Missouri, and one of my clients, Tyreek Hill, got banged up, and he's obviously one of the top players in the league, so there was a lot of concern, but from what I can gather, it looks like a thigh bruise, so I don't think the team expects him to miss much time, thankfully, but it's really strange as an agent, when you see your guys get hurt, and it's, guys, it's really one of the reasons I work so hard to get extensions done. Just the risk of injury is such an impactful thing when you're an agent. And, last year we had a guy in a contract year, Quan Alexander, go down in the middle of the season, and fortunately we're able to to get a good deal for him with the 49ers, but that's usually atypical, and so, injuries during a player's contract year really can spur extensions.
When something like that happens today, Drew, with Tyreek or with any other player, and like you said, it looks like Tyreek's going to be fine. What's your role? Are you kind of a parent? Are you kind of the business guy? Are you kind of cry on my shoulder guy? Like, how do you take that personal, quiet moment with a player who has just been hurt like that and may or may not know the extent of it? How are you handling that?
Well, I actually was with two clients that were injured. Tyreek's wasn't serious, but I was with the client, Keith Reeser, who tore his Achilles yesterday, season-ending injury. So definitely you console your clients, and you have to encourage them. This is their livelihood. This is their life. This is what they work for every day. So you got to really, in many cases, pick them up. But injuries are they're a very prevalent part of the game. And unfortunately, every year we'll have numerous clients suffer serious injuries. And this is the worst part of the game. And one of the things that I try and do when I deal with my clients is give them hope and optimism that they'll fight through the injury. But also, it's important. Part of my job is to make sure that we get a second opinion and that we get all of the best available information to make the best decision. Oftentimes we'll pick our own surgeon. If a player needs surgery, we'll pick a specialist or someone independent of the club. So that there's a lot of work that goes into dealing with your client's injuries, both in terms of dealing with them mentally and in terms of helping them moving forward with the surgery if necessary and the rehab, and then deciding when to come back to play.
Well, it's good news that the injury doesn't appear to be serious for Tyreek. And I want to ask you about his contract as his agent. He addressed the stuff, and people wonder, why aren't you asking about, what happened this summer? He already addressed that. You guys addressed that, so we're not going to talk about that here. I want to talk about the football and the contract here. Do you look at, and will you be looking at Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, Amari Cooper? Will you be looking at the piggyback off of those deals, or do you want to set the market with Tyreek's deal? How do you approach it without giving us too much here? Because I know there's probably some proprietary stuff that you don't want the GM hearing, but how are you going to look at it?
Yeah, that's true. So probably the best way to answer that is as an agent and just in general, you definitely have to look at all of the contracts around you. But from my standpoint, I love to study the market and see the deals that are getting done. And we were Atlanta. And, for example, with Dion, we looked very closely at the deal that we did for Quan Alexander. And we looked at the C.J. Mosley deal very closely. And we anticipated Wagner was going to led to the agreement with Dion. He, of course, was coming off of an injury where he missed 10 games last year and had not really been cleared to practice at that point. And so you have to take all those things into account, those that are getting done, what you expect other players to get, future deals, and factor it all into your given negotiations. We have quite a few extension talks going on around the league, constantly looking on my phone and talking to the NFLPA and following your site to keep up with the latest deals to kind of acclimate them into our thinking and our given negotiations.
Drew, just to get a little bit more specific, and obviously not to get detailed here, but I know you're constantly doing your homework, you and your staff. You're putting these numbers together. You sort of know where everybody values, kind of probably every day, right? But you fly into Missouri right now. I assume you're there to talk deals with Tyreek. How much do you have in terms of details? Are you bringing Are you bringing a guaranteed number? Are you bringing a fully guaranteed at signing number? Are you talking cash flow? Are you talking how this thing is structured with dead cap? Do you have it all in your mind right now? Or are you just walking in with, we know what we got to get to in terms of a per year contract, in terms of an overall value, and then we'll figure everything else out after that?
Yeah, so every negotiation is different, but they all have a start and kind of a process and an ending. And at the beginning of a negotiation, we approach it more generally. It's more open-ended, where we have concepts and we have an idea of what we're looking for on a guarantee basis, on an average per year, structurally on the term contract. We try to go into every negotiation with as much flexibility as we can, so that we can listen to the team and find out what types of things are important to them, what's important to us, where can we find common ground, how can we structure deals that are great for our clients. You're always looking for, really the best compromise. And so I try to go into every negotiation with an open mind and very much listen to what the teams are saying as well, and then do everything you can to maximize the negotiation and get the very, very best deal possible that you can for your client. But it's probably best not to go in with a set strategy, and really to be more open-ended so that you can be flexible enough during a given negotiation.
Drew, Mike mentioned, the preparation that you and your staff do to get you ready for these. I think people would be surprised to know, as prominent as you are and as many high-profile clients that you have, that you don't have a particularly big staff, maybe one of the smaller ones of an agency your size. Can you give everybody an insight? I know your brother plays a big role in the work that you do, but
right.
Is there a reason why you've kept it that way? How do you handle the sheer volume of player management with a smaller staff?
Well, now when it comes to negotiating contracts, it's really myself and my brother Jason that handle the negotiations for our NFL clients, and we do the deals together. Some I incorporate Jason more than others, and he's very instrumental in compiling the information and working with me on the strategy and participating in the discussions. And Jason and I do the heavy lifting on the negotiating side, but we have a staff that handles the administrative paperwork, the business. And Robert Bailey and ending the client relationship.
I think we're running into some cell issues there with Drew out in Missouri. So hopefully,
can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, we got.
You're cutting in a little out a bit.
Yeah. So I mentioned, we've got two other agents in Robert Bailey and Ryan Matha who are integral in our company. I've got two retired clients, Dwayne Starks and Kyle Moore, that work with us. We've got about 6 full-time employees on the marketing and endorsement side. We have people that work on charitable.
Yeah.
Well, we have.
Sorry, guys.
No, that's okay. Well, let's try one more question if we can, Drew. Cell phones is fantastic as they are. They're not perfect items. But if you could tell me, I want to know what's more exciting: getting a contract done for a client or landing a new client. They both got to be rushes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously recruiting is very important. You got to recruit the guy in order to get the deal done. So, recruiting is a great rush when you sign a new client and you build your client roster, their livelihood and their security and setting them up and their family. So no doubt the bigger thrill is getting the contracts done.
Cool.
And with your clients.
All right. Well, Drew, we appreciate the time. Cell issues, not a problem. Some great insights, and your time is certainly valuable. We appreciate the time you've given us. Good luck the extension with Tyreek Hill and the injuries, and hopefully all your players stay injury-free, not only through training camp but the season. Drew Rosenhaus, thanks so much for your time.
Guys, keep up the great work. I really enjoy Spot Track. I think you do great work, and it's a real asset to our business. And I use it quite a bit and enjoy it very much.
Thanks a lot, Drew.
Awesome. Thank you.
To hear. All right, Drew, take care. Thank you.
Care. Bye-bye.
Great to hear the endorsement of Spot Track.
Oh my goodness!
Right?
How about that, huh?
There you go.
How about that? Billboard's coming to a NFL right outside an NFL facility near you. How about that?
See, the important part is that didn't break up. Like, we apologize.
I can't believe that, as important as it is for Drew Rosenhaus, that he does not travel with his own cell tower.
Well, who's to say? Who's to say it's not my cell phone?
And I know he is somewhere outside of Kansas City in Missouri, so maybe it's a little bit iffy. But boy, I would think if Drew Rosenhaus' cell phone isn't working, that's the equivalent of your office being shut down and power and everything else, right?
Well, I tell you what, if Tyreek Hill wasn't okay, we would not have talked to him.
Yeah. And thank you, Mike, for everything that you have done to set up Drew Rosenhaus for that interview, because now I can erase the fact that he once hung up on me years ago in my past life as a reporter who was calling to ask him about one of his players that was holding out or a free agent or something, and I literally got almost, I'm busy, and got the immediate hang up. So I've evened up my record there with Drew Rosenhaus. I'm very proud.
I got to say this too. You can think what you want about him, and I know there's plenty written about his personality and the way he goes about his business. Every time I write a piece about one of his clients, and I've got no stake in any of this. Mm-hmm. I'm not making any money out whether Tyreek Hill gets $9 million or $19 million. But every time I put any kind of numbers out there or any kind of structural opinion on how things have gone, or if a new contract is signed, he is right in my inbox.
That's great.
And either positive or negative, he'll tell me exactly how he feels, and I appreciate that. I'm okay with somebody telling me my opinion stinks.
I once had an NFL general manager tell me that when Drew was at his bombastic peak of the late 90s, early 2000s,
very brash,
that the NFL general manager said, I love dealing with him. It surprised me, because you thought that everything with Drew was going to be a confrontation, because that was sort of the persona that he had built. But the NFL general manager said he's one of the easiest guys to deal with, because he understands. He's there for his client. He's an advocate for his client. And I was surprised by that, because you had this perception of what you think getting in a room with Drew Rosenhaus is all about.
I think he backed that up with the answer to my question about how detailed do you bring a contract to a GM. His answer was perfect.
Yeah.
I know what I need. I know what I want. But I'm going to let the team dictate things, and then we go from there. I think that's the right way to go about it.
And I think he probably would admit he's changed that, because I think some of the holdouts are famous, and some of the stories of, I want $10 million and slam it on the table, those, at least, that's what's used to be heard from his players and him himself.
Well, I was going to say, he's also had great players, so it makes it pretty easy, right?
He's got a stranglehold on this wide receiver market.
The question we didn't have a chance to ask him, which I would have loved to, was, in orchestrating the Antonio Brown situation, was really a transcendent moment in NFL history. One of the best, arguably the best player in the league, basically forced his way off the team that he was on for not a lot of compensation. To me, that's unprecedented and may signal the start of a lot of others. And you saw it with Beckham right after that. But I would love to have gotten into a little more on how'd you pull off something that had never been able to be pulled off before.
I think I would have liked the answer to your first point, which was, did it change things? Does he think now this is going to be a thing? Or is he going to push this to be a thing?
We've already seen it. I think with Beckham right after that, we saw it become a thing.
Right.
Where teams were willing, even though they had one of the greatest players in his position in the league, willing to think about moving them, when I think for most of our lives of covering and being around the NFL, that if you had a player like that, you're like, I'm not trading that guy.
Yeah.
No way. I don't care what you offer me. I'm not doing it.
Well, the interesting thing is, I'd want a guy like Rosenhaus in my corner, because you could tell that he's for his players.
It's all about the player.
Right? It's all about his players and getting them the deal. And so I respect that. It's like having, if you ever need an attorney, you want one who is an SOB in the courtroom. And like this guy is for his players, and all the things that he's doing, right? he's not in the office talking to the players on the phone. He goes and sees everybody. Right, and I know a lot of agents do. I'm not trying to, wow, look what he does. I don't know, nobody else does, but it just seems like it's his life.
Let me tell you why I know he gets it too, and by gets it I mean gets it as we talk about contracts around here. The one thing he was most proud of after Antonio Brown's move and then new contract was that there were no additional years added to Antonio Brown's contract. It was a 3-year deal. Better structure, better guarantees, which Pittsburgh was not willing to do. We know that. He was most proud that it didn't go more than 3 years, and that signifies control.
Sure.
He understands that one of the most important things right now in all of sports, but certainly with the NFL, is control, right?
Yes.
So that to me is a guy who gets it
control over
right there.
where you are and where you're going.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, it's great to have him on. Listen, obviously, he wasn't going to tell us too much, contracts, Tyreek Hill. Everybody listens to everything now in sports. And for those who might say, why didn't you ask him about the Tyreek Hill thing? I just don't think this is the forum for that.
I'm more worried about whether the contract gets done. What do you guys think? He's worth 19 according to my formula. 19 a year. Michael Thomas probably gets over 20.
Here's the question. How much does the other stuff impact this? It has to, doesn't it?
See,
it has to have an impact.
I don't think it has to in terms of the overall value of the contract.
But the way it's structured.
That's it.
Guaranteed money, he may get to the end point the same, but it'll be a different route.
Yeah, it just needs language.
Is he worth $19 million? Yes, he's worth $19 million. He's probably worth more. Yeah, I just think he
is because my valuation is a baseline. It's just numbers, right?
Well, the issue is going to be, does he want to stay in Kansas City?
Yep.
Right, and play with Pat
Mahomes, the best quarterback in football.
Right. Well, and do you want to leave some room the Patriot way for your team to keep pieces and or add pieces to win?
Well, Mahomes is going to cost $40 million in a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Correct.
Does Drew Rosenhaus care?
No. Drew Rosenhaus doesn't care about Mahomes.
Should he though? But he should. He should care about Tyreek Hill because if they have no other receivers, because they can't pay any others, then that's going to affect Tyreek Hill's performance.
Or not having Tyreek Hill is going to affect Mahomes' performance. That's the argument I would make if I'm Drew Rosenhaus.
Me too.
But
Tyreek Hill is worth $19 a year. Everything else aside, put it all away. For 3 years of production, he's worth at least $19 million a year.
What the Chiefs just proved is they didn't need Kareem Hunt to be good. You don't need to pay a top-tier runner. It's something we talk about all the time, and maybe what Jerry Jones was making his point with Zeke Elliott, to go back to earlier in this podcast. You don't need to pay a ton of money for a running back. It's actually not the smart way to go because you can find running backs, using plural there, that can fill the gap and get the job done.
They're going to have 3 running backs that cost $4.2 million.
And they're going to be fine.
Carlos Hyde, Damian Williams, Darrell Williams, all going to be adequate at best, maybe more. Mahomes only costs $4.5 right now. So you've got Sammy Watkins at a cap of 19.2. This is going to be his last year. He's going to be out after this.
Right, and they
already drafted his replacement.
Right.
This year. In the Hardman kid.
Or maybe Hill's replacement should that happen.
It was going to be one or the other.
Right.
And now with the landscape of Hill's, lack of suspension, it makes perfect sense. You can have Hill on the Sammy Watkins number, and everybody else is still cheap for a year and a half at least.
Right.
So you go hard after Tyreek Hill's contract right now.
All right. Great stuff. We'll keep an eye on those baseball trades with the trade deadline. And, of course, we'll keep everything up on contracts as they happen at SpotTrack.com. It's got Drew Rosenhaus' endorsement. Tell your friends about it. Check out the premium section of SpotTrack.com. And, of course, presented by Morgan Stanley Global Sports and Entertainment, empowering professional athletes and entertainers with the knowledge they need to know to make informed decisions about their finances and wealth. MorganStanley.com/GSE. Morgan Stanley Smith Barney, LLC, member SIPC.
Next to Jerry Maguire's endorsement, could there be a better one?
Show me the Quan, Paul. All right, for Paul Peck and Mike Janney, I'm Kevin Sylvester. We'll talk to you next week.